Hello, everyone. Welcome to the IFAD webinar series, Development Priorities to Achieve Sustainable Development Goals. Uh, we are accepting all our participants now, so please bear with us as we wait for all the participants from around the world to join us. Dear participants, welcome to the IFAD webinar series on development priorities to achieve sustainable development goals, challenges and opportunities. I am Mohammad Rubayat Sarwar, Managing Director and Lead Consultant, Innovation Consulting, and I'll be the moderator of today's session. I have with me a stellar panelist, and they will represent a wide range of stakeholders, including practitioners, policymakers, and project implementers, as well as aid agencies. The topic that we have today, empowerment of women, goal or means to sustainable development, is quite a dear one to me. It's quite complex, but also it's a very important one, and it's evolving. So today we'll be mostly talking about one aspect of it, which is empowerment of women. We know that Gender 5, SDG Goal 5, which is about gender equality, it deals with quite a lot of indicators, which are related to violence against women, which are also related to women's exclusion from economic activities, their empowerment, and so on and so forth. Today, we will be focusing on the empowerment issue and primarily be talking about the economic empowerment of the women. Over the last several decades, we have made quite some stride and we have been able to achieve quite some success, but still there are challenges, there are evolving challenges. In today's session, our panelists, they will be covering topics which will explore successes, but which will also map the challenges and the roadmap for us as practitioners and policymakers. I have with me the lead technical specialist, Gender and Social Inclusion, IFAD South Asia, Ms. Endaya Belchiki, Mr. Fazul Kader, Deputy Managing Director, PKSF, Mr. M. Khurshid Alam Khan, Deputy Commissioner, Noakhali, CDSP Project, Mr. Dinar Islam, Additional Secretary, Economic Relations Division, Ministry of Finance, Bangladesh Government, Ms. Shoko Ishikawa, UN Women Country Director. And then I have with me Mr. Nigel Brett, Director, Asia and the Pacific Division of IFAD. Now, before I begin, some ground rules. The attendees, you don't have access to video or audio. So what we want you to do is when the discussion is going on, you can write your observations, but also you can see a Q&A. Please use the Q&A button to have your questions. When you raise a question, please write down the name of the panelist to whom the question is directed to. We will have 2 rounds of discussion. We will have the speakers talk in the first round, and then we'll move on to the session for 10 minutes. And then we will have another round of discussion session for the next. So, and use the Q&A button as much as you can. Without further ado, I request now Ms. Tabassum Sherina, the Country Program Officer of IFAD Bangladesh, to start the session from her side. Ms. Tabassum.
Thank you, Mr. Sarwar. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me take this opportunity to welcome all the distinguished participants today. You will soon be hearing from, like Rubayat said, we have a stellar panel today, and our topic is women's empowerment. I want to take very few moments to introduce the Bangladesh portfolio to all of you. If we could move to the slides, please. So as you can see, I'm not going to read the slides. As you can see, the Bangladesh portfolio is one of IFAD's largest portfolio in the Asia Pacific division. And we currently have 7 ongoing projects. And these projects are being jointly implemented with the government of Bangladesh, specifically with the Ministry of Agriculture, Bangladesh Water Development Board, local government engineering department, and of course the Polikorma Sahayak Foundation. To date, we have been able to benefit 11.7 million households. And as you will see in the next slide, our current portfolio is also very robust. Can we move to the next slide, please? So the current portfolio has an outreach of 4.5 million households, which means we are reaching almost 21% of the rural population in Bangladesh. And hopefully we will hear from our speaker during the course of the webinar. We are benefiting 1.4 million micro enterprises, and most of which are women-led. Our portfolio is known for its very high performance, thanks to the very high quality of our implementing partners, strong buy-in from the government of Bangladesh, and also the strong partnership that we have in the country, in addition to the one that we have with the government of Bangladesh and our co-financing partners. We have a strong focus on climate resilience. And of course, we have extremely strong focus on women's empowerment, as you will hear from our distinguished speakers during the course of this webinar. So I am not going to repeat what's on the slide, but we'll move on to the next slide, please. So you will hear from our speakers the activities that are being undertaken with regards to women's empowerment. And I'm very pleased that this webinar is being organized as we are celebrating globally the 16 days of activism. So this is a very timely webinar. And I welcome you to actively participate and actively join the discussions. And please, as Mr. Sarwar, our moderator, said, if you have any questions to any specific panelist, please mention the name and post your questions in the Q&A window. Thank you very much, and welcome to you all again, and over to you, Rubayat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tabassum, for your brief introduction of this portfolio and the context of the webinar. I now welcome Ms. Ndaya Belchiki, Lead Technical Specialist Gender and Social Inclusion, to reflect on IFA's engagement in fostering women's empowerment and the importance of this theme for IFAD. Ndaya, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today, and what I will do is to give you a brief overview on IFAD's approach to gender in its portfolio. And so for now, what I will do, I will take off my camera so that to ensure the quality of the sound. So IFAD, as you know, invests in rural people so that it promotes inclusive and sustainable rural transformation. Gender at IFAD is integral to IFAD strategy as well as policies and operations. IFAD has an ambitious agenda when it relates to gender, and then the targeting of women is important because rural women is considered one of its primary target groups. When we look at the ambition that IFAD has as it relates to gender, it is an ambitious agenda that is throughout the entire project cycle, because as you know, IFAD invests in projects in its partnering countries. And then as part of that cycle, it designs, implements until the project comes to completion. Throughout that cycle, IFAD has some very ambitious target as it relates to gender. It has target at designs as well as targets during implementation. The targets that we set at design is that increasingly IFAD is focusing on what can IFAD do with its investments to ensure that we address the root causes of inequality between men and women. During the implementation of this project, the focus is to ensure that the investments are looking at the genders issued for all of the portfolio. So we look at 100% of the investment being gender mainstreamed. So now when IFAD makes those ambitious goals, they have a different instrument to help them support that. So IFAD has a gender policy. It has a gender action plan to operationalize that policy. And then he has some annual reporting as an accountability mechanisms to report every year on its performance as it relates to gender. The way IFADs measure its performance on gender uses two different approaches. Next, please. If we look at the next slide, we measure the gender transformation or the gender performance of our investment through what we call a rating scale. And that rating scales vary from 1 to 6. You would recall that I mentioned earlier that one of our objectives when we design projects is that we want all of our projects to mainstream gender, that is to ensure that the gender issues are captured during the investments. On the rating scales, that means that the project would rate between a 4 and a 5. That is when a portfolio is considered to mainstream or to take into account all of the gender-related issues. I am pleased to report that overall, the portfolio of Bangladesh is a 5 on average. That is on the scale on the 1 to 6. It rates very favorably when we look at the gender performance on a scale to 1 to 6. So now you would see that when we move from the left to the right, we increase the responsiveness of the portfolio as it relates to gender. For instance, if we go to a rating of 4, that is when the project is doing something. It promotes the access of input and services to address some inequalities in pursuit of productivity and efficiencies. In the context of the project, as we see in the chart development and settlement project, the projects provide trainings to improve the skills so that the livestock and crop productions are more productive. Similarly, it provides investment in waters so that to reduce the drudgery, and now women can access water in less time. Similarly, the farming now has become more productive. So those are type of investments to promote gender equity. Those investments or those activities would qualify as a 4. Now, if we move from the right to the left, we see that there are some activities that qualified as empowering women. Those activities would be deepening the inclusion as well as the empowerment, taking into account some structural barriers without changing them. As an example, each of the partnering agencies that we have for the implementation of the projects in Bangladesh have gender action plans with some specific targets. As an example, there is the target to ensure that there is a female membership in the management committees. That activity is women's empowerment. And then lastly, when we look at that scale, we see that we have some activities that would qualify as a 6, that we would consider gender transformative. That is, those activities actively examine, question, and challenge the underlying gender norms so that to challenge the inequality distribution of power. As an example, there is an inclusion of gender equality as a major objective of the 7th 5-year plan in Bangladesh. That is the 5-year plan between 2016 and 2020. Another example of a gender transformative activity is the land joint titling that we see under the CHAR project. Next, please. We see that we also measure the sensitivity of the gender activities to what we call an empowerment index, which is a modified women's empowerment index. That index captured the different areas or the different domains of empowerment that we call intrinsic agency, instrumental agency, as well as collective agency. The intrinsic agency relates to power within an individual. Instrumental agency refer to the power to do something personally, and the collective agency relates to the power of doing something with others. So those three domains of empowerment really capture very well to what extent some activities can promote the empowerment of women or men so that they become more empowered and can take some strategic decisions. Next, please. As we look at how IFAD interacts within its project through the implementation of the gender policy, the theory of change that is underlined is to address the root causes that we can put in different categories. And those are also very pertinent for the portfolio of Bangladesh. So we see, if we look to the left, the root causes and constraints, we see that we have a number of symptoms that we need to address, one of which is the lack of access and control over assets and benefits. Another one is the lack of representation for decision making. Those are some of the symptoms of inequalities. Below that, we see that we also have some deep beliefs and constraints that are the root causes that perpetuates those symptoms. So the activities can either address the symptoms or address the root causes. Now, if we go to the middle box refers to the strategies as well as the technical intervention to address the root causes. And we see that we can have different type of activities ranging from activities at the individual level to the full ecosystems. And then those activities or those strategies would be implemented through some specific technical interventions. And of course, the expected outcome is that over time, there is economic empowerment, there is representation of women, and that there is an equal share of benefits and workload. All of that to promote the empowerment of women as well as men. Now let's see how this applies for the portfolio of Bangladesh in particular. Next, please. We see that the root causes being some that I have mentioned. The portfolio of Bangladesh really focuses is pro-poor to make sure that men and women have access to skills, can participate in value chains, and then also have access to assets. And we know that rural women in particular are disadvantaged. When we look at some of the activities that are promoted within the portfolio of Bangladesh, we see that at the individual level, women are empowered with some legal advice as well as some financial literacy. There is an ambition to include some household methodology at the household level. At the community level, we have seen that we have the labor contracting societies as well as the participation of women in the monitoring committee members. At the institutional level, we see, and as I mentioned, we have the gender policies that is within each of the implementing agencies partnering with the project. And then at the ecosystems, we see that we have a partnership between all of the different agencies, as well as the support in the change of some of the laws, including referring to land titling, addressing the underlying cause of inequalities. So now we look at the technical intervention here, we see that the project itself, within still the middle box, we see that the interventions have been to secure land titles, to provide water supplies and sanitation, to promote the access of credits, and then to support the purchase of small equipment so that not only women have access to economic opportunities, they also have the resources to mobilize and then have access to finance. And then they are also more aware to take on some additional roles and responsibilities within the various committees within their communities. Now, the outcome that we see that the outcome has contributed to what we were looking for, in particular in the areas of economic empowerment, equal representation, and then the share of workload and benefits. When we see the different dimensions, we see that now there is more autonomy in income, there is ownership of land, women have access to financial services, they go less far, I mean, they get closer for them to collect water. They have also invested in equipment so that they work less in terms of unpaid work and have more time to invest in their financial ventures. And then they are also more active in the different committees where they are representing their priorities. So this is just at the high level to see to what extent the portfolio of Bangladesh, following the different activities and strategies, is promoting women's empowerment. And now I will turn over to the next speakers to go into the details of the projects. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Indira. That's brilliant. I really loved how you explained the different degrees of engagement of in the or keynote phrase that, but also I liked the foundation of this challenge with respect to economic engagement. And we talk about individual level engagement and then household, community, institutional, ecosystem level changes which are connected to
dear participants, I think Mr. Rubaiyat is having connectivity issues. Let me now invite Mr. Fazlul Kader, please, to share with us his experiences and PKSF's experiences. Mr. Kader, what are the major interventions that PACE is undertaking to enhance women's entrepreneurial skills and capacities, enabling women to participate actively in the transformation of Bangladesh's rural economy? Over to you, Mr. Kader.
Thank you, Mr. Bassam. I'm back. The internet is not behaving well today. Fazlul Kader, sir, are you there with us?
Sincere apologies. It appears that our panelists are having some connectivity issues as well. I would like to invite Mr. Khurshid Alam Khan, please, while we wait for Mr. Fazlul Kader's connection to become effective. Mr. Alam, if you could kindly speak to us, what are the major interventions that CDSP is undertaking to facilitate women's empowerment? Over to you, Mr. Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I am Mr. Mohammad Khurshid Alam Khan, Deputy Commissioner of Noakhali District, and as well as I am the PD of CDSP, Soda Development Settlement Project. I have got your point, just a major intervention of CDSP to facilitate the women empowerment. Actually, it's a great pleasure for me to talk before the great personalities who are very much related to the IFAD project. It's a great opportunity to me also. I think it's the major intervention of CDSP to facilitate the women empowerment. The first thing I will discuss here, the ownership of the settled land is entitled equal to the wife and husband with the 50-50 share, which ensure the equal rights. It's a great, actually it's ensured the women empowerment, just equal share in the land record. Widows, and next point is widows, separated and divorcees are eligible to get the ownership of government caste land, which ensures the inclusiveness. And in the third point, I have included here, putting the wife's name first in the land title, which ensures the empowerment of women. Actually, in the first name, in the list of the women name are included here. This is the very important issues that empower the women here, I think. Next point, title deed signing and registration done in the field level, which ensure better administration at the doorstep. All those custling distribution and hearing and others, everything we have already completed in the doorstep. That means in the doorstep side, in the custland area. This is another important point in our project, in this serious project. In the next phase, regarding the women's participation, 40 to 50% of all levels of field level institutions. And then another point is water management group, farmers forum, TWL users group, and a special forestry groups are the main parts of this women participation. And then microfinance members are 27,869. That means women. This figure is 100% are women. And post-harvest tree sharing agreement is 55% BFs, beneficiaries, and 20% landowner, and 10% FD, and 5% EP, union parishioners. Those are the contributions of the sharing of the post-harvested trees sharing agreement. This is the, and labor contracting society regarding the BWDB, DPHE, LGD. Another thing is TWL users group, 100% women caretaker included here. Microfinancing groups are 100% women beneficiaries, and trained poultry vaccinators are 100% women at community level. Those are the main participations in the. Those are the main indicators which women's are participation, which represents the women's participation in the road level area in these projects. Next slide, please. Those are the main intervention. Those are the main ingredients of the women's participation. I think what I have said earlier. This is the main point from my side.
Thank you, Mr. Kushikaram. Thank you so much for reflecting on CDSP's interventions on land issues. And I think it's a very important aspect, and it's also highlighted in the gender equality target of SDG, which is about women's access to land rights. But also, I really liked how you connected with what Ndaya was presenting. And as you have seen in her presentation, there are different degrees of engagement at individual level, household level, community level, institutional level, and ecosystem level. So you are connecting to that dot very well. As we hear from all the panelists, I request our participants to please raise your questions. I can see 3 questions now. I also request the panelists to please respond to the questions on the question and answer room. Ndaya, there are some questions that are targeted for you. So if you may please respond to those questions on the Q&A room, that will be fantastic. I will now go to Mr. Fazul Kader. Sir, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So good to see you, sir. So
thank you.
We now come to you, Mr. Fazul Kader. And PKSF is implementing the PACE project, and you are working on several value chains. So I'll be really interested to learn from you how PACE is addressing some of the issues related to women's entrepreneurial skills and capacities, how they're being connected to the wider value chains and market systems, and so on and so forth. So over to you, sir, for next 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rubaiyat. Before focusing on PACE, I would like to mention that PACE is one of the projects of PKSF to support its ongoing programs, ongoing continuous programs. So one of the ongoing continuous program is enterprise development, through which we want to promote environmentally and economically sustainable, productive employment, especially in the rural areas, and urban peripheries of the entire country. And IFAD has been actively supporting us to strengthen this program. And PACE has got special focus on the agricultural commercialization aspects of different agro-based microenterprises. From the very beginning, we have the core strategy of PKSF is to empower women economically, because we thought that if we can empower them economically, then we'll have multidimensional effects on other elements of empowerment, like it will contribute positively to increase their mobility, decision-making ability, autonomy, ownership of assets, political and legal access. At the same time, it will ensure in establishing their reproductive rights, enhance their participation in social activities, and it will also enhance their exposure to media, to information. So PACE is no exception than in our other programs. PACE is focusing basically on ensuring gainful employment in microenterprise sector, so that these tiny income generating activities can be transformed into full-time employment generating activities, productive economic activities. Under PACE, 77% of the clients are women. In our normal programs, 92% clients are women, but under the microenterprise program, it's 77%, because we want to ensure more active participation of the women, so that they're not used as mere conduits of receiving the loan. I remember in 2000, we undertook a rapid study at field level, and we found that only 2% of the women are actively managing the economic activities. Now this ratio has been increased to 30%, which is a very significant stride, I would say. They are not mere loan recipients, they're actively managing the economic activities, which is an economic empowerment. 30% is active direct management of the microenterprises. But jointly, it is much above that. Jointly, because the microenterprises are often family-based businesses. And we found that on an average now, women's direct and joint contribution in managing the economic ventures is above 81%. In our value chain interventions, we have made several value chain interventions, about 70. Out of these value chain interventions, 48% program participants are women. And the absolute number is close to 145,000. And they are, these women participants are engaged not in only production, in market, in the entire value chains. And our total number of beneficiaries out of this interventions is 300,000. Of them, 145,000 are women. We have provided business management training, and 62% of the trainees are women. The number is now 1,880. Though the number is not very high, but we are expecting an osmosis effect of this intervention, so that these women equipped with better business management skills can become icons, source of inspiration for other women also. And that's why we undertook a mentorship program also. We have focal points, female mentors, and we have linked them with successful entrepreneurs also, so that female entrepreneurs can get mentorship support from the successful entrepreneurs and trained trainers on a continuous basis. We are engaged in.
Sir, if I may just
Yes.
come in here a little bit. So I will move on to another speaker, but I'll come back to you on this point where you're leading mentorships, if you may allow me.
Yes, I will take just 30 seconds, then I'll finish the point. We are engaged in technology transfer, and out of the technology transfer program, 42% of the participants are now women. And all of our partner organizations involved in implementing PACE project, they have gender policy and gender committee as per direction of the government of Bangladesh. Thank you. I'll
Thank
stop
you
here.
so much, sir. Thank you so much. There were some, yes, there were some very important takeaways here, sir. So I'll connect it for the audience and also for our next panelists. You spoke about how investment on women empowerment can lead to multidimensional effect. You spoke about domino effect at the autonomy level, political level, reproductive rights level. So I think, I mean, we must take note of that. And I'm sure our practitioners who are joining here have a lot to share about it. You also spoke about, let's say, only 2% being engaged on economic activities, which now you have facilitated to 30%. That's a huge success, I would say. So we will connect to these dots. You spoke about mentorship, skills development, which is connecting to what Endaya was saying as root level problem. And this also connects to that framework about community level, individual level, and household level intervention. So that's fantastic. I will now move on to Mr. Dinarul Islam, sir, if you are there. Mr. Dinarul Islam, ERG is a very critical stakeholder, and the Nordic wing is undertaking a lot of interventions through its, through the different agencies. So I would like to request you to shed some light on some of the priority interventions that are being undertaken under the different projects under the Nordic wings. So over to you, Mr. Dinarul Islam, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rubaiyat. Respected participants, a very good afternoon to you all. At the very outset, I would like to thank IFAD for inviting me as the panelist of today's webinar. Before going to respond to the question or to my topic, please let me allow to mention over here that IFAD is one of the responsive and conscientious development partners of Bangladesh. IFAD plays a very critical role in the development of our rural economy, particularly empowering the rural women.
That's good.
So with this, just to start, distinguished presence, in Bangladesh, we know that women constitute a great majority of the population. Women development is therefore precondition to national development. It is imperative to establish equal opportunity and rights to ensure national development. As far as our constitutional provisions for women empowerment is concerned, our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, ensured equal rights of women and men in all spheres of state and public life as constitutional obligation in 1972. For the political empowerment of women, Article 65(3) of the Constitution provides 50 reserved seats in the National Parliament. During Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's tenure in 2011, Article 19(3) was adopted as a fundamental principle of state policy pleasing to ensure equality of opportunity and participation of women in all spheres of national life. Our government of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has undertaken various steps and initiatives to ensure women's empowerment in Bangladesh. To this end, various projects and programs have been undertaken. Through our Vision 2021 and 2041, a momentum has been created for taking forward Bangladesh to a middle and high income level, respectively. The 7th five-year plan of the Bangladesh government considers women's engagement in political and economic activities as a cross-cutting issue and one of the main drivers of transformation. We have our international commitment too. Present government is committed to attaining the sustainable development goals of gender equality and empowering women. Bangladesh has already substantially achieved the MDG 3, we know it, and as it has achieved gender parity in primary and secondary education at the national level, among other successes of MDGs. Bangladesh has been working relentlessly to ensure women's overall development by ensuring their equal and active participation in the mainstream socio-economic activities and removing the various impediments to their empowerment. Respected participants, in recognition of the outstanding contribution to women empowerment, our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been honored with a number of international awards, such as Global Women's Leadership Award 2018, Planet 50/50 Champion Award, Agent of Change Award, Outstanding Leadership Award, International Achievement Award, etc., and so on. Now, concerning projects on women empowerment under Nordic wing of ERD, I have to mention over here that ERD in fact acts as a bridge between the government and the development partners. Regarding empowerment of women, the project and programs are being implemented by different implementing agencies under different ministries and divisions. Mobilizing funds from the development partners is the mandate of ERD. However, as per our record, under IFAD finance, 7 projects are being implemented. We have already briefed about PES project, Prabhati project, RMTP, CDSP, NATP 2, phase 2, SSCP, HILIP, and CALIP. Of them, PES and CDSP projects were briefed by DMD PKSF and Deputy Commissioner Noakhali respectively. You could know the nitty-gritty of the projects regarding the empowerment of women. And I'm not touching those issues. Out of the rest 5 projects, that is Prabhati and RMTP, they are directly targeted. They are directly targeted to the empowerment of rural women. The project Prabhati aims at empowering women and men aged of 18 and above to develop skills for resilience and sustainable poverty reduction. At least 70% of LCS members and 30% of vocational trainees are female. Women's involvement in infrastructure planning and implementation are enabling them actually to raise their voice and participate and their participation in decision-making process. New jobs created in construction and maintenance, constructing shops in women market section for women traders, and allocation of open space are bringing rural women into the market economy. With regard to RMTP project, this project places great importance on specifically supporting women to participate in the mainstream of social and economic life, particularly poor women, women-headed households, and young women. Bangladesh has made important progress in these areas through education, health, rural development, and microfinance. The predominance of women in microfinance program is well established and has improved women's access to finance interaction with markets as producers, sellers, and consumers, and status as family decision makers. About 75% of micro-enterprise borrowers under RMTP project are women. The project has 3 components or activities, we can say, that is value chain enhancement, financial services, institutional strengthening, and project management. The 2 other projects, NATP 2 and SSCP, are directly targeted to the smallholder farmers, including rural women. NATP 2 project aims at improving national agricultural productivity, market linkage, and farm income, with a particular focus on small, marginal, and female farmers. Actually, SSCP project targets to smallholder farmers, but there are fewer opportunities for employment for women. The activities of the project include increasing farmer incomes and livelihood resilience through demand-led productivity growth, diversification, and marketing in a changing climate condition. Okay, well, this is all from my end. Thank you very much for giving me passion hearing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dinesh Kansa. I think, a common theme is emerging here. What I can see is that financial services is coming out as an important intervention in all the projects that we're hearing from. We would come to that aspect later, but also I'm saying the issue of transformational impact of investment of women is also emerging as a theme. So it would be great also if the participants from around the world can share their reflection on the chat room about some of these issues related to, let's say, transformational impact by investing on women, and also, let's say, the financial services. What are the bottlenecks? What are the go on, share your reflections on the chat room. We all can benefit from each other's reflections. So please make use of the common platform that we have created now. I will go to Shoko Ishikawa, the country director of UN Women. Shoko, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Shoko. So, Shoko, you have heard from our speakers so far, and you have seen they have covered a diverse range of topics. So, you have been a very important stakeholder with regards to interventions on women's empowerment in Bangladesh. So, I would really love to hear from you your experience on, the crucial areas of interventions for Bangladesh. So, if you can highlight some of those interventions for us, and note them for us, that would be great in the next 5 minutes. So Shoko, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to this event, and I'm glad to get a glimpse of what IFAD does and the sort of the theory of change behind it, which is quite solid. So big congratulations to the IFAD team for what you do for the women of Bangladesh and for gender equality. I think the question was about the most crucial area for intervention with regards to women's empowerment. And I echo the speakers in saying that I think expanding women's economic opportunities is really central to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And investing in women's economic autonomy is one of the most crucial pathways towards gender equality and women's empowerment, as well as poverty eradication and inclusive economic growth. But I think the economic empowerment, although we've been working on it, the pace of progress is still something that we want to see accelerated further, and we want to close the gender gaps faster. I think too often discriminatory social norms constrain women's ability to find decent jobs on an equal footing with men. And layers of disadvantages, including those related to poverty, ethnicity, disability, age, geography, migratory status, you name it. They all remain an enormous obstacle to equal rights and opportunities for millions of women. Women perform the majority of unpaid domestic and care work, and they also work for pay or profit in a variety of ways and contexts in the formal and the informal economy as wage and salary workers, employers, own account workers, and contributing family workers. In Bangladesh, a significant percentage of women, and that's 29% of the entire female labor force, are involved in unpaid activities on family farms. And therefore, despite them being included in the labor force, they're not in a position to exercise financial agency. And so I think in this dimension, IFAD is working actively, and your partners are working actively in getting microfinance into the hands of women so that they could earn their own income. The gender differences in both unpaid work and in all types of paid work are large and persistent, reflecting constraints on women's economic opportunities and outcomes. So even when women are paid, we know that they tend to work in jobs that reflect gender stereotypes and are characterized by relatively low earnings, poor working conditions, and limited prospects of advancement of opportunities. In many jobs and sectors, women have restricted scope for collective voice and action. And even when women do the same jobs as men, that men perform of equal value, they are paid less on average than men. So women in Bangladesh earn about 57% of what her male counterpart earns in the same amount of work. Hundreds of millions of women work informally without social and labor protection in law or in practice. And in Bangladesh, around 91.8% of women who are working are employed in the informal sector, and more than half of them are in the low-end agriculture. So expanding the opportunities for women in informal work is integral to realizing the SDGs. Also lagging behind men, women are lagging behind men as entrepreneurs. In Bangladesh, there's only about 7.2% of registered micro, small and medium enterprises that are led by women, and they are really in the micro and cottage enterprise category. Therefore, again, financial access to credit from the established financial institutions become very challenging. Therefore, the micro credit activities that have NGOs and intermediaries have been very useful for women. So despite the advances in girls' education or the different spheres of progress that we hear about women's advancement and empowerment in Bangladesh, why do we still have so much of a gender gap still persisting? And this is also similar in other countries too. It's not just Bangladesh. So according to the Secretary General's high-level panel on women's economic empowerment, which reviewed global evidence in 2016-2017, there are four overarching systemic constraints to women's economic empowerment. And number one, that's adverse social norms. Second, it's discriminatory laws and policies and the lack of legal protection. Number three is the failure to recognize, reduce, and redistribute unpaid care and domestic work. And number four is the lack of access to assets, be that financial, property, or digital assets, technology, and so on. And so these all undermine all aspects of women's work. I don't know if I have time to go into each of the spheres, but I think I really would like to.
Sorry, I think it's a very important, nice segue. I'll come back to you on the later round on each of these issues so you can speak in further details. But very important dimensions coming out from your speech about, let's say, the areas where we still need further growth, including the social norms, the distribution of labor, engagement of women in formal sectors and unpaid labor. So very clearly understood. And of course, our other panelists can build on it. I will go on to a video where we see some aspect of how we are probably influencing women's engagement in the field. So Imran, over to you to show the video on one of the projects from IFAD.
In southeast Bangladesh, working as a construction labourer is considered a man's job. But these women are knocking down social barriers while earning their way out of poverty. Until 3 years ago, Nargis Begum was struggling to earn a living. She and her family had been left homeless when her house was washed away and her land eroded by chronic flooding in the Bay of Bengal. Then she had the opportunity to get a paid job as a labourer.
At first, labouring seemed impossible, but now we can do all kinds of work. Before, we didn't leave the house or even know about the things around us.
For many women here, access to economic activities outside their homes is a rare opportunity, and they are often the poorest and most marginalised members of rural communities. Now Nargis is one of hundreds of thousands of women working on construction sites across the country. This is part of a scheme initiated by the government. Local unemployed and destitute women and men are hired to carry out building work to provide much needed employment while developing rural areas. Organised into groups called Labour Contracting Societies, or LCS, these workers are trained to build and maintain essential community infrastructure. such as roads, cyclone shelters, latrines, and marketplaces. The UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development, or IFAD, is using this model for most of its development projects in the country, generating more than 2 million hours of employment per year.
Providing opportunities for women to undertake construction works gives some of the very poorest households an income. This empowers women, enables them to take a bigger role in household decision making, and gives them the first step on a ladder out of poverty.
For Nargis, this has indeed been the first step out of poverty. Now that she is earning her own money, she has greater say in how it is spent. She has brought livestock, rebuilt their house, and manages to send both her children to school.
Through my work with the Labour Contracting Society, I can pay for my children's education. I want to send them to medical school.
And her husband, who is running the farm, says the extra income benefits the whole family.
It is good for the family. Times were hard, and this work brings in additional income.
The possibility to earn a living is not restricted to labouring. The IFAD-supported project in this area also provides Nargis and other women in the community with training in agriculture and other income-generating activities. Besides employment opportunities, the women are also learning about family and community issues through workshops on legal rights, gender equality, sanitation, and disaster preparedness. Labourer Parul Begum says that participating in these workshops and being involved in activities outside the home has changed her role in the community.
Before, I couldn't give my opinion or talk in public. Through my work, I now go to meetings, and I've learned a lot of things. I can now even mediate in disputes between people.
With this empowerment, some traditional customs are also changing. Sumi Akhtar, the eldest of 5 children, was due to get married at the age of 13, but her mother attended a workshop on legal and human rights where she learnt about child marriage and its impacts, an issue which the government is currently addressing. She felt empowered to speak out and postpone her daughter's marriage.
If I had got married then, it would have been bad for me. But now I am happy.
And Sumi will grow up to join the hundreds of thousands of women in Bangladesh who now participate in the economic and social lives of their communities, opening up new opportunities for her future.
Thank you so much, Dan. Soko, coming back to you, this video speaks about women's engagement in construction labor. You spoke about how gender stereotype plays a big role in interventions and not necessarily engaging women in non-traditional labor. And this video also speaks about breaking social norms. But I also have in front of me some questions, and one question is about the responsibilities of women when they're, being empowered, whether due to social norms and practices, it increases, because economic empowerment may also mean that women are at the same time engaging in household chores, because gender stereotyping in household chores is not changing, while also we are demanding that women engage more and more on economic activities. And not only that, we also believe that women should go out and have access to markets, and so that they can have control over the income. But these are often kind of, let's say, polarized areas that create tension between the success and failure of interventions. So quickly, if you can have a reflection on that question, it would be great.
Right. I hope I understood the question correctly, but I think, it's what was said in the video is very encouraging in terms of the empowerment that women are having. It also, what you were saying also is that are we actually burdening more and more of women? We're expecting women to do everything, to be out there, to be productive, to be community leaders. But as you said, the division of power and the household chores haven't changed that much. So when I talk about social norm change, I think we need some deliberate work that we do, and there's some good examples that I've also recently learned about, where we do actually have conversations, dialogues with men. And so, for example, this video was all about the women and the women learning their legal rights, women learning about child marriage, which is good. But that's also equally a responsibility of the man to also know about all of these things, and also understanding that child marriage needs to be prevented. The man needs to understand the power that he holds and how that is actually creating an environment in the household where the women are not on equal footing in terms of decision making or control of the assets. And so the man needs to sort of learn also how to change that power dynamics. So there has to be an approach where you work with the couple, you work and you change the gender dynamics intentionally, I think, rather than leaving it to the sort of the ripple effect, because there have been studies that show sometimes that there are adverse effects of just investing in women, and that actually then leads to the man actually exerting violence on the wife that is becoming more outspoken and having the income in the hand. So I think we need to prevent that from happening by working with the man as well as the community perception of women stepping up, being leaders, and work from all different dimensions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shoko, for the brief answer. There are some questions that are directed to you on the Q&A room, so I would request you to have a look and answer them. Very interesting questions for you there. I will now move on to Mr. Fazul Kadasa, DMD PKSF. So, sir, I mean, when I caught you on the first round, you were speaking about the mentorship issues, but you also raised some of the pertinent issues related to financial services. So I'll come back to you now and would request you to shed some light on how do you think financial services are relevant and important for women's empowerment, and what you are doing on your capacity to facilitate that. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Rubaiyat. There is a discussion on this for quite some time that we are in microfinance or financing the, inclusive financial sector. Women are only used as conduits for receiving the loan, but this has not been used by them. It doesn't really empower them. This is a popular criticism about this notion, but I will tell our experience with regards to this. Just enabling them to receive the loan, is empowers them. This is to our, and several studies also receive that, because since without them, the family will not get the loan or the finance, that empowers them. And then it also, since the loans are to be repaid by them, so they can exert influence on family decision-making process with regards to managing the economic activities. And there are several studies that showed that there is positive effect on women empowerment. But the interesting thing is more and more women are now started managing the economic activities. And at the same time, we see that ownership of asset is also increasing for the women. I would like to focus on another aspect. There are several indicators we use to assess the degree of empowerment of women. I think there are scope for discussion on these indicators and how we interpret them. For example, trade license in the name of women. There are local context, cultural context. Sometimes even the trade is registered in the name of the underage children also sometimes. So it doesn't necessarily reflect that women are not empowered, because in the cultural context of Bangladesh, sometimes the actual dynamics of managing the economic activities and the way they influence the decision-making process is quite complicated. And we see that increasingly women are exerting more and more influence on managing and managing the entire economic activities. So I propose that we revisit the indicators again and, and contextualize these indicators and interpretation also, because the women empowerment aspect is quite complicated. There is huge cultural issue also. So we have to take account of all this multidimensional context in order to come up with some practical indicators and proper interpretation. I was looking into the report of the Economic Forum revealing the gender index gap and found that Bangladesh is doing the best in South Asia. And also we are much ahead of countries like many European countries and also China and USA even, which was very surprising to me. Nonetheless, what Suko said, it's true. I think we have got long way to go. And these projects, PACE and CDSP, this kind of projects, we are doing, I think, we are creating examples. And this, as our culture is changing for unavoidable economic change in economical structure and other things, I think we are now, Bangladesh is transforming our society very quickly, quite fast. And the cultural changes are taking place at a very faster pace in our country. And because, for example, in Bhairab, we have changed in the shoe industries, micro shoe industries, we have introduced new management technology, line management system. As a result, this sector was devoid of women employee. Now this is flooded with women employee. But what Suko said, it is true, the wage rate went down a little bit, but this also had an effect on stopping the upward mobility of males' wage also. And at the same time, as more and more women are coming, the scenario is also changing because the labor market is quite competitive and more because if they can do the same amount of work, the employers will prefer more women there. And then there will be, I think, will reach sooner or later to an equilibrium position where the wage rate will be for the same amount of work. Wage rate will become same because the employers really, they care for the return they pay to the employees. And the mentorship, especially, the mentorship program is basically, we are trying to instill confidence in women through mentorship. And as a result, we have several case studies where we found that women are employing their husbands in the economic activities they have undertaken. We have started documenting all these case studies, and we found that yes, women, if we can instill confidence in them, they can undertake ventures, they can manage them well, and even they can use their family members, including husbands who were unemployed or employed in a less productive economic activity. They can switch over to the economic activities run by their wives or female family member. And the interesting thing is there is no cultural shock. They don't feel the man, most of the men, we found that they don't feel anything bad about getting engaged in an economic venture initiated and managed by their wives, because the beneficiary of the benefit of these ventures is accrued by the family as a whole. The children can be better educated and they are socially more empowered. Socially, they get more dignity as a result of this, so that they can see the benefit out of it. The males started behaving more positively to this. So I would conclude here, but before concluding, I would like to say one thing. This is we are undergoing through a cultural process, cultural change, which is very complicated. There are various dimensions we must take into account of those things. And we have to come up with some kind of composite indicators that can effectively interpret the kind of impact we want to see in the long run, a viable impact, so that we can capture those changes. That is the goal, and we should all work together on this. So that through our RBM, result-based monitoring system, we can monitor the progress, the process indicators, as well as the impact indicators. We can monitor on a continuous basis. And PKSF has integrated all the projects with our continuous programs so that we can sustainably keep on focusing on this very important social issue. And the PACE project and the other projects are actually strengthening our continuous program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. I'm sure please take note of this point because I'll come back to it later to you about contextualizing the indicators. So I'll ask for your reflection later. So please take note of that. Mr. Khurshid Alam sir, over to you. And you were presenting about the land rights and entitlement, about how CDSP was intervening on that. So very quickly, sir, in next 3 minutes, if you could conclude on your discussion about CDSP's engagement in co-ownership of land titles. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Giving me for second time. Actually, another change that CDSP introduced to the process of improving the position of women regarding the land right in each quotient, then that means a land title, husband and wife have equal share over the land, and wife's name now written in the first in the legal document. That as a result, what we have seen in the slide, just women becomes legally entitled to 50% share to the own land. Another thing is increases access to the finance and leadership role, strengthening their position in the family. Another next point, provides the uninterrupted access to the land. And next point, another point is ensure the legal positions in many decision-making process. And next point is legal selling of land become harder. Illegal selling. Actually, illegal selling is almost impossible without women consent. Equal ownership result in reduce the domestic violence and divorce also. Next slide, please. It also providing the title directly contributed to the main objectives of CDSP. Already they have improved their livelihoods, and it considerably broadened the asset base of the households. They are now eligible to take loan from the banks, keeping the land title as a mortgage. This is very important for women empowerment in the rural area. What I think, the legal security is that the documents are giving to the settlers is certainly stimulating them to invest in their newly acquired land, which has a positive effect on the agricultural production. Then what I mentioned now, being legal landowners, the social status of the household has been enhanced, and the self-confidence to the settler has increased also. But if you see the impact on the household income, asset, and others, and housing items are average household income it was in the baseline 2011, it was 71,950, and now in 2007 it will 2,96,250. That means it increases 312%. It's a great increases what I have think. Average household asset taka 50,162. It was in 2001, and now in impacting on 2007, it's this figure now 2,61,485. It's also increased 643%. Also increased, and average housing size square kilometer 25.3. It was in 2011, and now in 2007 it's 43.9, and it's also increased 74%. Also increased, and tin sheet oblique brick walls and percentages in 13% in 2011, and now in 2017 it was in 84.1%, 84.1%. That means 71% is already increased. And in the last point, tin sheet roof, it is 16 in the 2001, and in 2007 it was in 82. That means in this point also 66 point increase. Finally, what I have mentioned, just I am now mentioning that after getting ownership, the land title, they are continuously developing their land in productive manner to pursue their livelihood, such as the home estate gardening and seed preservation, and produce vermin and compost and quick compost, and involve themselves in chain value in their product. This is a great impact what I have seen.
So thank you so much.
ওষুধি গাছে বাতাসের দোলায় স্বপ্ন নাচছে সাথী বেগমের। সেই স্বপ্নের ছায়ায় বাড়ছে জমি, উঠছে নতুন ঘর, মর্যাদা বাড়ছে পরিবার সমাজে। তার মতো আরও অনেক প্রান্তিক নারীকে অর্থনৈতিক ক্ষমতায়নের পথ দেখাচ্ছে 2015 সালে চালু হওয়া প্রমোটিং এগ্রিকালচারাল কমার্শিয়ালাইজেশন অ্যান্ড এন্টারপ্রাইজেস পেইস প্রকল্প। 6 বছর মেয়াদী প্রকল্প যাত্রা শুরু করে আন্তর্জাতিক কৃষি উন্নয়ন সংস্থা ইফাদ, পল্লী কর্ম সহায়ক ফাউন্ডেশন, পিকেএসএফ ও এর সহযোগী সংস্থাগুলোর যৌথ অর্থায়নে।
খুব অভাব অনটন, খুব কষ্টে চললো সংসার। চাল পাল বৃদ্ধি হইল, তাদের চাহিদা মেটানোর জন্য আমাদের কিছু ছিল না। খাতা কলম দেওয়ার মতো আমাদের টাকা পয়সা ছিল না। স্কুল থেকে আসলে ভালো মন্দ খাদ্য দেওয়ার চাহিদা তা আমরা মিটাতে পারি না। কর্ম না দেখে মানুষ আমাদের সম্মান দিত না। ইউপিএস এসে আমাদেরকে ঋণ দিল এবং প্রশিক্ষণ দিল। আমরা পতিত জমিতে ওষুধি চাষ শুরু করলাম।
এই প্রকল্পের মাধ্যমে বাংলাদেশের ক্ষুদ্র উদ্যোগ খাতের বিকাশে আর্থিক পরিষেবা, ভ্যালু চেইন উন্নয়ন ও উপযুক্ত প্রযুক্তি সহযোগিতা দেওয়া হচ্ছে। পিকেএসএফের 38টি সহযোগী সংস্থার মাধ্যমে 42 জেলার 133 উপজেলায় 15টি কৃষি ও 16টি অকৃষি উপখাতের উন্নয়নে 3,999,000 জন সদস্যের মধ্যে পরিচালিত হচ্ছে 74টি ভ্যালু চেইন উপপ্রকল্প।
আমরা জমিতে অশ্বগন্ধা, শিমুল, গীতি কাঞ্চন এবং হস্তি পলাশ এসব চারা বপন করে নিজেরা সংগ্রহ করি। আমি নিজে সংসারে এই চালন দিয়া চালি, শিমুলের পাউডার প্যাকেট করি।
পেইস প্রকল্পের আওতায় উদ্ভিজ ওষুধি গাছের চাষ ও প্রক্রিয়াকরণের মাধ্যমে উদ্যোক্তাদের আয় বৃদ্ধি ও কর্মসংস্থান সৃষ্টি শীর্ষক ভ্যালু চেইন উপপ্রকল্প বাস্তবায়ন করছে উত্তরা ডেভেলপমেন্ট প্রোগ্রাম সোসাইটি ইউডিপিএস।
ওষুধের নার্সারি বড় হতে থাকলো, আমাদের ভাগ্য উন্নতর দিকে এগিয়ে চললো। বাচ্চা কাচ্চাদেরকে আগে তো কষ্টের জন্য কিছু দিতে পারতাম না, খাওয়াতে পারতাম না, চাহিদা মিটাতে পারতাম না, কিন্তু এখন আমরা তাদেরকে ভালো মন্দ চাহিদা মিটাতে পারি, ভালো স্কুলে পড়াতে পারি। আমরা এখন সচ্ছল। কুড়ে ঘরটা ভেঙে নতুন একটা পাকা ঘর তৈরি করব। ইউডিপিএস আমাদেরকে যে ঋণ দিছিল ওই ঋণ দিয়ে আমরা ওষুধি চাষ করছি চাষ করে আমাদের সংসারও চালাইছি, ওদের টাকাও আমরা দিয়ে দিছি। আরও যদি আমাদের কিছু সহযোগিতা করে ওরা, তাহলে আমরা আরও বড় ধরনের কিছু করতে পারি।
2017 সালের 3 মে শুরু হওয়া এ প্রকল্পে বর্তমানে নাটোর জেলার সদর উপজেলায় 4500 জন সদস্য রয়েছেন।
ইফাদ অর্থায়িত পিকেএসএফ কর্তৃক বাস্তবায়নাধীন পেস প্রকল্পের আওতায় ভ্যালুচেইন প্রকল্প এই ইউডিপিএস বাস্তবায়ন করছে, যেটি মেডিসিন প্লান্টের উপর। তিনি অনুদান নেন, ঋণ নেন, প্রশিক্ষণ গ্রহণ করেন কীভাবে চাষাবাদ করতে হয়, কিভাবে বাজারজাত করতে হয়। তিনি স্বামীকে কাজ জুগিয়েছেন, তিনি নিজে এটি পরিচালনা করছেন, প্রশিক্ষণ পেয়েছেন, স্বামীকে প্রশিক্ষিত করেছেন এবং 500 লোকজনকে প্রশিক্ষিত করেছেন। এছাড়া তার এখানে আরও 5-6 জন মহিলাকে তিনি কাজ দিয়েছেন অ্যাজ এ শ্রমিক হিসাবে।
এখন আমরা উন্নতর দিকে এগিয়ে যাওয়ার কারণে আমাদেরকে সামাজিক অনেক অনুষ্ঠানে বা অনেক জায়গাতে আমাদেরকে ডাকে এবং আমরা ছাল পাল নিয়ে আরও ভালো করে চলতে পারি।
Thank you so much. I think, very nicely explained how land entitlement can lead to transformative impacts. You have drawn connection between land entitlement to loans or mortgage access and violence, domestic violence. So these are very relevant to the discussion that we are having, sir. So, if you allow me, I now want to move on to Mr. Dinarul Islam, sir. So, so we are hearing about some of the important aspects and impacts. My final question to you is if you could help us understand some of the key policy priorities of the government of Bangladesh with regards to women's economic empowerment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ruvaid. As far as the policy concerned, if we look at the National Women Development Policy 2011, that reflects actually the commitment of our government for empowering women in our country. So let me talk about the major objectives of this policy. Actually, the policy has been adopted to establish equal rights of men and women in areas of state and public life in the light of Constitution of Bangladesh, to ensure security and safety of women in all areas of state, social and family life, to establish human rights of women, to ensure full and equal participation of women in the mainstream socio-economic development, to bring up women as educated and skilled human resources, to give appropriate recognition to women's contribution in socio-economic areas, to ensure taking appropriate steps to ensure sound health and nutrition of the women, to arrange rehabilitation of the women affected in natural calamities and armed conflicts, to extend overall assistance to ensure rights of the disabled women and women belonging to the smaller ethnic groups, to arrange safety of the widow, aged, guardianless, husband abandoned, unmarried and childless women, to provide necessary support services for development of women, to provide overall assistance in ensuring the growth of women entrepreneurs. These are in a very nutshell, it's a long policy, but some major objectives just I touched upon. Apart from that, the policy of government, the government has some approaches, some programs for empowering women, such as what I mentioned earlier, that is social safety net program. That is under the VGD program, women are being given food grains, 30 kgs per person per month for a 2-year cycle. Also, there are projects, being implemented for digital Bangladesh, 4 projects, namely Info Appa, My Internet, My Income, Women's ICT Freelancer and Entrepreneurs Development Project, and district-based Women's Computer Training Project have been undertaken to provide training to the women in order to facilitate women's participation in creating digital Bangladesh that we are pursuing now. special initiatives from Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. We know it. Empowerment of women is one of the 10 special initiatives of our Honorable Prime Minister. The slogan, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's message, equality of women and men, is being disseminated to create its branding image through letters, envelopes, posters, and folders of the Ministry of Women and Children Affairs. There is one thing, that is gender responsive budgeting. When we chalk out the budget, so we started to chalk out it, taking into account the gender response. That is, we started from 2009. Also, we have a very, very, very good initiative, that is gender responsive guidelines for design and review of development project. Whenever we frame our chalk out these, DPP or TPP, that is, development project performer and technical project performer, we also look into the, where and how to include the issues of women development and rights. That are also, looked into whenever we are preparing DPP and TPPs.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let me finish this within 1 minute. And there is a, one very, very important thing, that is inclusion of mother's name along with father's name in all respects has been made compulsory. Maternal leave has been increased from 3 months to 6 months. To promote women entrepreneurship, an initiative called Joita has been established in 2011. Now it is established as Joita Foundation. Sales and Exhibition Center, Joita Foundation and Angona promote the sales of garment products of destitute women and women association from across the country. So these are the, in a very nutshell, these are the programs, but there are so many interventions and programs, approaches are being implemented by different ministries and divisions. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for the patience.
Thank you so much. I mean, just some highlights. You did speak about government's policies on rights of women with disability, women from ethnic minorities, childless women, widowed women, divorced women. I think, this is very crucial because one aspect of extreme poverty in Bangladesh is related to a large proportion of disadvantaged women not being able to participate in any kind of economic activities. So I'm so sad that we can't really talk in much details about these issues. So, but this is indeed very, very important to our progress and pathway out of extreme poverty as well, not only just gender equality. But you also spoke about gender responsive budgeting, gender responsive guidelines. These are very important elements, I believe, to ensuring gender sensitive programming in Bangladesh. Shoko, over to you. We are coming to close of this session. So over to you, Shoko. You have heard from our speakers speak about a lot of the interventions. Building on those, what are your key messages to IFAD Bangladesh? What should they be looking at?
Thank you so much. First of all, again, I'm very impressed with what I saw in terms of the approach that IFAD is taking in its program. And I see that IFAD Bangladesh marks quite highly within sort of the IFAD's internal systems of how you are programming around gender. So congratulations on that. I think I've already spoken around perhaps working a little bit more around the social norms issues, and UN Women's really happy to be collaborating on that in the future if there's an opportunity. Maybe another area is, I think it's implicitly part of your work, because I do see that you have considerations for making sure that the wash facilities, for example, are in place so that women don't have to go those extra miles to go and collect water. So the whole issue of women's unpaid care work, and how do we try and reduce that burden so that they could be spending more time in the productive activities that you are trying to promote among them. And so perhaps around that area, there's more policy advocacy that IFAD could also contribute to, talking about and bringing women together to talk about the realities of women. For example, there was mention of maternity leave policy. The government has now extended it from 3 months to 6 months, but that's really for women in the formal sector. The RMG factory workers are perhaps entitled to that. The women who are working in the private sector are perhaps entitled to that. Those in the government offices are entitled to that. But women in rural areas, they can't actually take a single day off, a single week off. They go right back to working after they have their children. So how is the social protection policies and the schemes working? I know that there are maternity allowances in place. There are lactating mothers programs. There are some of these programs, but the scale is quite small and the reach of it is quite small. We also continue to hear challenges around the inclusion-exclusion era around social protection programs. So there is a large number of rural women who do not have access to these maternity allowances. If there is some allowances that they are provided, then they can afford missing the 2 weeks off or a few weeks off from going out to the field and working. And women need that rest. Women need that time with the newborn babies. And so this kind of more widespread, and I think within the UN, we were just discussing this before, do we go for targeted approach or universal approaches? And I think our advocacy in the UN is turning more towards universal approach of social protection, where you don't have to be a certain kind of woman to be able to avail of maternity allowances, but there has to be a high enough threshold so that many of the women in the rural areas who never have access to this are able to access. When it comes to unpaid care, also, I think the government is actively promoting childcare and early childhood development and childcare. That also is a way of reducing the burden of on women to take care of the small children, while also trying to attend to the work at home in the farms or even non-farm activities. But again, these measures for childcare is very much centered around formal work. If you go to the rural areas, I think it's very rare that you would find a childcare facility that a farmer could go to and let the child be there while she goes out to the field. So some new ways of perhaps a community-based approach for childcare. Childcare care itself can be a non-farm activity and a wage earning activity for women. And that's something that we are trying to promote in terms of professionalizing the care work and bringing women more into the professional care work, childcare. Elderly care is going to be an issue in Bangladesh quite soon also. And that's again an area where women are going to be burdened and women are going to be the ones who are going to be held back from participating in productive work and being expected that they would be the ones that will take care of the elderlies. So I think areas around unpaid care work is certainly something that perhaps with IFAD, we could look particularly around rural women's challenges and how we could overcome this in terms of policy advocacy, as well as, again, mobilizing women on the ground to be able to be part of this advocacy and voicing out what is it that would make sense to them in the rural communities. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shoko. Thank you so much. I hear that you're talking about the universal approach for social protection against targeted approach. That's quite interesting. And also, you talked about inclusion and exclusion era in social protection. But I think what you're highlighting is the need to address creatively the issues of unpaid care work, both in urban and rural setting. And it's quite an interesting idea that you share about a community-based approach for childcare and how it could be also a non-farm engagement. That's quite an interesting idea, and I believe, our participants are also hearing all of these ideas. There were a few questions, so I just want to take one of these questions for Fazul sir to you. The question is, many times women trade license used by men to run business, but the women they don't get the benefit out of that ownership of the trade license. Is it not time to think about this? So Fazul sir, do you want to quickly answer this question about the trade license issue, how it does not probably lead to entitlement or empowerment?
I'm definitely in favor of, transferring the entitlement in favor of the women, definitely. But what I pointed out is that there is a cultural process which might take some time to change this culture. So we are inducing this, and we are seeing positive indication that they have started having the trade license in the name of the women, but we want to increase the momentum of such transformation of ownership in favor of women. But the process should be smooth, because it might generate social conflict. So that's why we are keen on, so that the male part, what Suko rightly pointed out, the males must participate positively in this process. So our intervention is including in all our training programs, we have integrated the women empowerment aspect of this issue in our training program, and we are also encouraging the men to be included in these sessions, so that this is an issue of human beings as a whole. It's not a just isolated women's issue or isolated man's issue. We have to go together. We have to move out of this patriarchal society. So this is a slow process because it is so deeply ingrained. So that's why my main point is, we have to be aware of this social transformation process. It has to be smooth, and it has to be social acceptance has to be there. And we are already seeing that. I've cited some example that the social transformation in terms of cultural values are changing at a pretty fast rate in Bangladesh. And we have seen this in the gender index gap also in the report. We are 50th in the world and first in the South Asia, and ahead of many so-called developed countries in this area. So I'm very optimistic, Rubaiyat, that we'll go ahead. And of course, entitlement, economic empowerment, it has got multifaceted impact. And one of the integral element of economic empowerment is transfer of the entitlement. Under the CDSP, the way land entitlement is transferred in favor of the women, I think that same has to be applied. Same policy should be applied in our micro-enterprise sector also.
Thank you, sir.
But it has to be smooth. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Just a reflection, there was a question on existing negative social norms and low value of girl-child issues. And the need to address this at family and Sorry, sir, go ahead.
Rubaiyat, there was a disruption in the sound. Can you repeat again?
No, sir, this is just a reflection from the question and answer session, not yours. So so Shoko is saying that we need community and family level initiatives that help men, women, boys and girls understand gender roles and dynamics, masculinities and femininity, gender power relations and respectful relations. So I think, the issue of social norm is coming up very strongly, and the need for engagement and intervention at community level, household level, institutional level, ecosystem level, which is what Ndaya started to talk about, is very crucial. And we are seeing that have emerged as a very critical thing over the course of this discussion. So now, Nigel, you have been deeply listening for last 80 minutes or so, the discussion. So thank you so much for this deep listening exercise. But I'm sure you have a great deal now to reflect on and to share with all of us. So over to you, Nigel Brett. And please take us through the discussion that we have had and your key takeaways for all of us.
So thank you, Rubaiyat. Can you hear me okay?
It is fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
So it's really been a great pleasure to be with all of you today. I must confess, whenever someone asks me to participate in an event on Bangladesh, I find it almost impossible to say no. It's a country so close to my heart. It's always been a great inspiration to me in my professional life. and it's a country that's provided so many celebrated thought leaders and development practitioners who really have innovated, including around issues of women empowerment. And there have been extraordinary successes in Bangladesh that we can all learn from. And Fazl mentioned just now, there are many areas where Bangladesh is a leader in South Asia and beyond. So let me take the opportunity to thank our esteemed panelists who have taken the time out of their busy schedules. Mr. Dinarul Islam, thank you very much for your participation. IFAD has a really strong bond with ERD over many years, and we have a great country program. IFAD is extremely happy with the country program in Bangladesh. It's one of the highest performing portfolios. Just to let you know, the PACE project is now the second highest performing project in the entire program management department. So globally, out of 250 projects, it's number 2. And another project, the Marginal Farmers Project, won the prestigious US Treasury Development Impact Award. So it's a really high performing portfolio, and this has really only been possible because of the strong leadership and the buy-in, the policy support from the government of Bangladesh. ERD has always been ready to support us, innovate, try new things, push the envelope, and sometimes to try controversial things, but with hindsight, things that were quite transformational. Activities like the women's sections in rural markets, or the labor contracting societies that we heard about today, or the land titles in women's names. I really want to underline what you said about the importance of leadership in government and the supportive policy framework so that women's empowerment can happen on the ground. And without that leadership and the open-mindedness in government, it would really be impossible to achieve what has been achieved in recent years. Mr. Alam Khan, it was a pleasure to hear from you today and to meet you. Congratulations on your very commendable work with the Water Board in the most climatically vulnerable areas in the coast, in Noakhali and districts which are really at the front lines of climate change. I'm always inspired to hear about CDSP. I understand now that there are 32,000 land titles that have been awarded. And I wanted to underline one of the key areas that Ndaya raised on the structural issues on women's empowerment. And this is around the land titling and the equal ownership of the land titles between the husband and the wife, with the wife's name actually coming out up front. I've been to visit CDSP a number of times, and it always makes me happy. And I actually had the honor to visit with Vice President Donald Brown and to actually participate in one of the land distribution ceremonies and hear from the women. It was really, really inspiring how getting land title has led to big increases in income. I remember hearing that it was, from women that husbands were no longer divorcing them because the rights were enshrined in a land title. You also stress the important role of women in the other groups formed by the project, the women's vaccinators, the labor contracting societies, the microfinance groups. So I really take my hat off to you and to BWDB, LGED, and the other agencies involved. And I'm looking closely to see how CDSP evolves in the future. Fazl, we've known each other for about 20 years. It's always a pleasure hearing about the evolution of PKSF and how PKSF continues to be at the forefront, ensuring no one is left behind in Bangladesh. We've been very lucky to work with you, and you're such a forward-looking, innovative organization. I feel the projects we finance together, whether it's around training women in village poultry, on the village poultry model, or seasonal lending, or female-run micro-enterprises under PACE. Pretty much all of them have focused on women's empowerment. All of them have been innovative, took risks, tried new things, and innovation is so important in our business. But you can't do innovation unless you work with strong partners like PKSF. I really liked what you said about the importance of scaling up. And to do that, you need strong ownership. You need organizations like PKSF who have an eye on long-term sustainability. I also really like what you said about the issue of fronting, or men acting on behalf of, or as conduits for women. But I was curious to hear that even in those cases of fronting, studies show that there is still benefits generated in terms of enhanced agency for women in the household. I was also very interested to hear you say about about moving away from a patriarchal society, and the fact that we do need to do this sensitively, and we do need to make sure it happens smoothly, and that there needs to be social acceptance, particularly because these changes happen quite quickly. And looking at the most recent project, PACE, which we spoke about today, it's quite extraordinary if you look at the numbers. 150,000 women-led enterprises. This is staggering in terms of numbers from one project. And access to finance has also established these women as leaders in their communities, where they've really been able to take forward social agendas. So I encourage the Bangladesh team to continue to work closely with PKSF and to develop knowledge products, because I want these results to happen in other countries. It's been proven to work in Bangladesh, but we need to learn from Bangladesh and make sure that we get these impressive results across the region and beyond. Sincere thanks to Shoko Ishikawa for being able to join us today. I understand you're extremely busy. You've had many events in the recent weeks, including a national dialogue with 16 days of activism. So, and congratulations on organizing these much needed events. I listened to your deliberations with interest, and I really hope Tabassum and the IFAD country team can take you up on your suggestion to work more closely with UN Women. I want to underline what you said about the importance of supporting women's economic opportunities and autonomy, and that we need to increase the pace of action and close gender gaps. And I second your point about the challenges ahead to reduce gender gaps. The example you gave of challenging social norms, for example, increasing access to assets, looking at things like professional childcare. I also really liked what you said about the importance of working with men and with the community to ensure we mitigate for risks of potential opposition to some of these gains. And what you said at the very end about the importance of policy advocacy for women's empowerment. Special thanks to my colleague Ndaya for joining the webinar today and setting the stage for our discussions. Our country teams work closely with our technical experts, and Ndaya has been leading in that respect. And I want to very much underline what Ndaya said. We have a very ambitious program for the future, and we've focused on the root causes of inequality in our project designs. And to do this, we need to focus on challenging norms, on gender transformation, on looking at expanding some of the things that we've been doing in Bangladesh. So things like the joint titling of land. And Ndaya also pointed out the importance of intrinsic, instrumental, and collective agency, which I thought was a very powerful conceptual framework. So Bangladesh has demonstrated, significant improvements, and IFAD and other development partners are always happy and ready to provide support in the implementation of national policies. There's a lot more that needs to be done, but I feel that we're moving in the right direction, and we're moving quickly in the right direction in the case of Bangladesh. We will continue to work with the government to ensure we're able to mobilize the necessary technical support to provide for SDG 5 on achieving gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. So you have our full support. We are with you on this journey. We will continue to be with you on this journey, and I'm very optimistic that SDG 5 will be a success story in Bangladesh. Finally, heartfelt thanks to all of you for being with us today, for all the questions. I hope we were able to, there were satisfactory answers to many of the questions raised. And finally, congratulations to the Bangladesh team, to Tabassum, Nabil, and everybody who worked behind the scenes on this webinar series. I'm really happy with what you're doing. I would love to see similar events for some of our other country programs. And I'm grateful for you to having invited me to be part of this webinar today, and wish you all the best for concluding this webinar series in mid-December. So a final, very warm thank you to everybody for all your contributions today. Thank you.
Thank you, Najib.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being here. It was a very enriching discussion. I learned a lot. I'm receiving a message that it would have been great to have some debate on goals versus means issues. I'm so sorry that we can't touch all of this, but we assure you that we will be discussing and taking this forward. So our next webinar, the final one, will be on 15th December. Please have a look at your mail for the instruction and the direction for joining on the next session. And having said that, today is a wrap. Thank you so much. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Rubaiyat. Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rubaiyat.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. We will talk later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.